we're middle of learning the Kuntras on the essence of Chasidus. We are at page 25, chapter Beis, chapter 2. So until here, the Rebbe told us 4 reasons why Chasidus came when it came, why the Baal Shem Tov was Megalit, revealed it, and what its purpose is. And I'm not going to repeat now the 4 reasons. You must know those reasons to understand the rest of the Kuntras. So over Shavuos, you have 2 days. You have a lot of time, guys. So please review this and get it thoroughly in your cup, because everything else in the Kuntras depends on those 4 reasons. Let's continue now, chapter 2. Moving to Poshut Kedilakaman, it is self-evident and it is understood. Asher Teres Chasidus hi nekuda achas she'eino murkeves miprotim shoinim. That Chasidus is a central point, singular and indivisible core, which is not a composite of various particles, particular ideas and particles. In other words, there is a way of looking at Chassidus like this. There is Gemara, Talmud, there is Halacha, there is Musar, and there is Zohar. Right? And when you put them all together, you make a nice chont out of them, you get a nice stew, you get a nice taste. What do you get? Chassidus. So in other words, some people think, you know what Chassidus is? A nice vart. A cutesy vart. But a cutesy vart that has some oomph in it. Some oomph, some zest, some soul. Is that Chassidus? No, that's not Chassidus. Some people think Chasidus is the equivalent of Gemara with its intellectualism, dialogue, and analysis. So like they always say, a good lawyer would make a good Talmudist, and a good Talmudist would make a good lawyer. What's Chasidus? Chasidus is a place where a Litvak can feel very comfortable. You know why? Because it's very intellectual. And by the way, don't think that that's just a facetious joke. But rather, that is one of the reasons why Chabad Hasidim and Litvaks, the Brisker and others, got along very nicely for many years in Lithuania and in Russia. The Litvaks had much bigger issues with the Karliner, the Stoliner, the Chernobler, and everyone, and most other groups. With Chabad, again, I'm saying about a certain period in the 1800s, from the Tzemach Tzedek's time on, they felt very comfortable, and that's why the Tzemach Tzedek, in 1843, when he was called to Petersburg for the meeting, they wanted to put an edict on the Jewish community with censoring Sfarim and different things. Who went along with the Tzemach Tzedek? Who went along with him? Reb Itzhelev Volozhiner, Reb Yitzchok of Volozhin, who was the son of Reb Chaim of Volozhin, who was the Talmud Muvik of the Gaon of the Vilna Gaon. It's amazing. Hand in hand, walking down the aisle. Who? Reb Nachum Mendel of Lubavitch, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the paradigm Litvak, Reb Itzhelev Volozhiner. That's right. Because there was commonality, besides communal commonality, other things. This isn't the only reason. I would be shorting you if I told you that's the only reason. But one thing's for sure. The style of Chabad Chasidus speaks to a Litvak. I'll give you an example that I told you earlier at the beginning, but some of you weren't here. This Kuntras we're learning, the Rav Rabbi Soloveitchik was made aware of it one Friday by his son-in-law, Reb Aaron Lichtenstein, of the Hesda Yeshiva, of course, in Eretz Yisrael, the great genius in Rosh Yeshiva. and they learned together the kuntris, they say all night, for many hours. And he was so impacted, Rabbi Soloveitchik, that when he finished, he said to his son-in-law, as soon as Shabbos is over, call 770 and tell them there that Rabbi Soloveitchik says that the Rebbe has to make more such kuntresim. Why? Because the analysis and the elaborate style and delving right deep into one nekudah, one point, and one topic from A to Z is so up the alley of Brisk. That's Brisk. Brisk does that with Rambam and Gemara. So here you see clearly, he didn't say that about Maimorim, although he was a very big fan of the Alter Rebbe. Rabbi Soloveitchik was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. If you had to call him a chassid of anyone, it's the Balatanya. I know from someone who told me back in the 60s, I believe, on his birthday, he brought him a birthday cake, and the Rav said, in Brisk, we don't celebrate birthdays, but come in anyway. So he put down, and what did he see on the table besides a math and science book? He saw a Likutei Torah of the Balatanya on Rabbi Soloveitchik's table on Amsterdam Avenue in Manhattan, at Yeshiva University, the Morgenstern Dormitory. Yes, Hillel.
Where was that on Amsterdam Avenue? I grew up around the corner.
Oh, you're kidding me. I don't. I'll get the address. It's public. You know you look up Morgenstern Dormitory on Amsterdam Avenue is the building of the dormitory building. You know,
it must have been way uptown. I grew up in Morningside Heights. So
yeah, no.
121st Street. So
it's uptown.
Near YU. That must have been way.
Yeah. It's the YU campus. Anyway, so what I'm showing you is that the Litvaks, the real, Litvish a style to learning Gemara and taking apart a Gemara, as they call it, it goes in line with Chabad Chasidus, which, takes apart a piece of Zohar or Arizal. So, why am I saying this? Isser, why am I saying this? Because the Rebbe says here that Chasidus eino murkeves miprotim shoinim. It is not a composite of different details. In other words, so a strong Litvak can appreciate a piece of Chasidus, and someone who likes a good story and likes to touch the chords of the soul and to feel emotional and to get involved can appreciate a good Chassidish Maisa, right? No. What the Rebbe says here, this is the Chiddush, this is novelties. Chassidus is not, look at the words, murkeves miprotim shoinim. In English, it's not a composite of various particular ideas. Let's continue. And since we mentioned 4 different explanations for the need of studying Chassidus, and when Chassidus came about, each one has a different quality. We must say, it's in bold. I gave you 4 reasons, right? Pick your reasons. So Avram's going to say, out of the 4 reasons, what talks to me is the 4th reason. The 4th reason is I want to understand Kabbalah. But I don't have no lofty soul. I'm sure he does, but and I don't have a lofty soul, and I didn't refine myself much. I'm a regular guy, regular Yid, fine. But I know the Zohar HaKadosh, the Holy Zohar, the Arizal, the Kisvi Arizal, the Pardes, the Ramak. I want to have access to this. I want to understand this. This is a whole world of Torah that I am obligated, the Alter Rebbe writes in Hilchos Talmud Torah, Moshe, that every Yid has to learn every part of Torah. If not, you're coming back here again in a Gilgul. It's not a joke here. Look at Hilchos Talmud Torah. The Alter Rebbe makes that as a ruling. Halachically.
I'm familiar. I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
I was thinking that I was glad that you weren't talking about Borough Park, though.
Yeah, right. We wouldn't have any room for them. So the point is that everyone will choose their reason. Yonis will say, you know what talks to me? The third reason. To change the midas tivium, not only the bad midos, but the nature of any type of midah, even a good midah, like Yonis gave us the wonderful example of giving out tzedakah. He gives tzedakah, we give tzedakah. But he brings coins and gives to others to teach them, right? That's within good itself, refining good. That talks to Yonason, right? So each one of us will choose a different reason. Is that what Chasidus is? Says the Rebbe, no. Wrong. Chasidus is a nakuda, a core. And from the core, everything else comes out. What that means, we haven't learned yet. But he's setting up his essay. The Rebbe's a good writer. He's setting it up. That Chasidus is a core. Let's continue. That's why he said. That's why Hillel, the word mahusa, right on page 25, next to the last line, the third word, mahusa is in bold. There is the mahus of Chasidus. In English, the word is the essence, i.e., the name of this essay is called On the Essence of Chasidus. The manifestation for Chasidus, I appreciate and I understand. For one, it's intellectual. For one, it's emotional. One person is or likes. Like I told you, at times when I get, it's too quiet around here, which is hard to imagine. I run into the stolen shul, and you get your high for the day. You get your fix. And they're carrying on, and they're screaming, and they're shaking, and it's really gewaldig. And if you ain't moved by that, I don't know what's going to move you. Even a garbage truck hitting you won't move you. But that's not, that's, 1 second, Hillel. That's not the core. That is a manifestation. That is a development. Yes, Hillel.
It struck me when looking at the bold lettering that Mahuso, like Latanya talks about Koach Ma, Chokma being Koach Ma, and Mahuso begins with Koach Ma.
That's right.
So to speak.
Yeah. Very good. Let's continue. Yes.
The word Mahut is Mahu.
Right. Mahusa, Hillel, Yonason teaches us that the word Mahusa comes from the word Chochma, Mahu. Mahu. What is it? What is it? Okay, let's next line. Mahusa shal Chasidus. So now the question is, what is the essence of Chasidus? Here it is. Mahusa shal Chasidus. The essence of Chasidus. Nikuda atzmis. It is a quintessential point, hamufshotim minyonim protim, which is completely abstracted and removed from any particular ideas. Next page. However, elo mitzad nikudoso ha'atzmis, due to its quintessential point, nimtsois u'mishtaifos mimenu mailos hanal. The above-mentioned 4 qualities exist and are derived. In other words, if someone's a mensch, they're a mensch and they're sleeping, and they're a mensch and they're eating, and they're a mensch when they play golf, and they're a mensch when they work, they are a mensch. That's who they are. There is no time when they're bereft of being a mensch. If they really are a mensch, meaning, i.e., if their mahus is a mensch. If they're not a mensch, then they're never a mensch. You'll say they were so nice on this day, on that day, this day. Guess what? The cat and the mouse. The cat trains itself to be a waiter. The mouse comes along, it drops the food because it gets scared. In other words, The cat's not the cat's not a waiter. The cat pretends to be a waiter. And guess what? You can pretend a very long time, but it catches up to you. It catches up to you. So just as this is true in character, right? The Rebbe says, Chasidus is the quintessential point of a connection to God. When you have that, everything else comes from it. Emotions, intellect, feeling good, being with people. This is why, Chevra, it's coming Shavuos. That's why. What do we need to invest ourselves in the next 48 hour Shabbos and Shavuos? In inculcating Torah within Pnimius. What was the previous Rebbe's word here, sir? Kabbalah Satayra. He wished everyone you should receive the Torah b'simcha u'b'pnimius. If simcha isn't hard enough to have constant joy in your life, pnimius, inwardness, innerness, depth, I like the word depth, that's the word here. Chasidus is a nekuda of depth. You see, Moshe, and some people, when you tell them this, they say, well, Chasidus is for people, well, no Shas. I'm sure you've heard this argument, right? Yonason, I'm sure you've heard it too. When I'll know Shas, and I'll know Zoyar, and I'll know Halacha, and I'll know Musar, then I'll worry about Chasidus. What's the counter argument to that? The argument is, if you want to have a chance of knowing Shas and everything else, you need to be motivated and gravitate towards it, and that comes from deep within. And the fact that you were raised a certain way, or for a while you got excited, then comes along the world that you live in, and the temptations, and the indulgences, and the hardships, and the challenges, and the money, and the wife, and the kids, and the rabbi, and all of a sudden, you don't have the same feeling, and you become dry and stale. But if it's your lifeline, and without Chasidus, you feel as though you can't breathe, okay? You jump. You jump. Because this is my lifeline. That's what we mean by Nikuda. Let's look the word Nikudasa ha'atzmis, top of 27. In English, the quintessential point. And from that, Nimtsoes, it comes as a derivative, Umistaifois, Mimenu Milos Anal, all Milos. Let's continue. The Nekuda, the quintessential essence of Chasidus is Kimeduber Le'eba Maimer. This kuntris was said originally as a talk the Rebbe gave following on Yutes Kislev, 1965, and it was the talk after the Maimer Chasidus, the Rebbe said. So the Rebbe says, as we explained in the Maimer, the Maimer the Rebbe said that night, 1965, Yutes Kislev, was based on a Maimer that the Rebbe Rashab said in 1915. In 1915 or 1914. Yeah. Well, actually 1914. What does it say there in the Maimer? And what did the Rebbe repeat? Hamshochas oir chodosh, Chasidus is, the Rashab says, Chasidus is the effusion of a new light, mibchinas pnimius ha-keser, from the innermost level of from the innermost level of keser. Ulamayla, I'll explain soon. Ulamayla yoser, and yet higher, hamshochas pchinas pnimius atik mamish, the actual effusion from the innermost level of Atik. Ulamayla yoser, and even more so, Pchinas Ein Sof, the infinity of God, Shenimtza B'Radlo, which is found in what we call Radlo, which is an acronym. In the brackets you have the breakdown, Bereisha Delo Isyada. The head or beginning that is not known. Okay, let's break this up. Before let's read a note here. Note 15. When you see the words here, Moshe, a new light, Avram, an Or Chodesh. What does that mean, a new light? So let's look at note 15. I'll read. Light is used as a favorite metaphor in Kabbalah and Chasidus to represent and describe the various manifestations, emanations, and forces of the divinity. So when we talk about Hashem giving influence to the world, we're talking about, we use the metaphor of light. It is often used in contradiction to what is called Atzmut, the essence of God, the level beyond all definition, manifestation, etc. Rabbi Shochat explains this in his book. He says there, Rabbi Emmanuel Shochat, in his mystical concepts of Chasidism appended to the English Hebrew Tanya, uses Kabbalistic sources to explain the aptness of this metaphor as follows. Of all physical phenomena, light is that which most deeply approximates what is spiritual and freed from the limitations of matter. For example, it is not corporeal, number one. It delights the soul, number two. Number three, it enables one to see. It is also analogous to the nature of divine emanations insofar as light is never separated, this is number four, from its source. Number five, spreads itself instantaneously. Number six, irradiates all physical objects. Number seven, does not mix and mingle with other substance. Number eight, never per se changes. Number nine, is essential to life in general. And number 10, is received and absorbed relative to the capacity of the recipient. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Yes, Yonason.
There's one more he missed out, which is Om Ein Hamo.
And he doesn't say it here, you sure?
He doesn't say that.
Okay.
You may have wanted to keep the number to 10.
I mean, this...
No,
But that's an essential point of life that is similar to the source.
Right, that Or Mein Amor, Yonason makes the great remark, which is found throughout Chasidus. He says it's not one of these 10 things, and I don't have the mind space now to look carefully at each of the 10 things. But basically that... Go ahead, why don't you explain it, Yonason, since you said it.
The light coming from the sun, the rays coming from the sun, is similar to the light on the ball of the sun itself. In other words, you can tell the rays coming from the stars. You can tell what the stars are made out of by examining the quality of the light.
Right. So, Or, from the light, Me'ein Hamor. It has a similarity, right? Me'ein, it has a similarity to Mor, to the source of light, to the illuminary. Let's continue the last paragraph for a second and the note to finish it. Needless to say, however, the analogy is still only an approximation and must not be taken in any literal sense. Terms and concepts related to the divinity must be understood spiritually without any temporal and spatial connotations whatsoever. But basically, this all is an explanation for the words in the text, in the Hebrew, Or Chodesh, that Hamshachas Chasidus is the Or Chodesh, the new light that comes from the inner aspect of Keser. Now, what does it mean? Let's talk about Keser. Look at note 16. It's self-explanatory. That's why I'm reading the notes. Keser means the crown. In Kabbalah and Chasidus literature, Keser refers to one of the most transcendent levels of godliness. It is the crown, or level, that transcends the 10 so-called Sfiras, creative divine attributes and manifestations of God. The Sfiras are divided into two categories: Seichel, intellect, and Midos, emotions. The 10 Sfiras are the source of and parallel to the 10 powers of the human soul. Just as man reveals himself through his attributes or their garments, through speech, thought, speech, and act, indeed, similarly Hashem reveals himself through his attributes, the Sfiros. Then there are 4 worlds, or basic levels, each of which is a general category of divine manifestation, ranging from the highest level where there is total unity with Hashem, down to this lowest physical world which we inhabit, where the infinite is all but concealed. Each of these 4 worlds contains numerous sub-gradations, also described as worlds. Now, Keser is the level which transcends all worlds, and which is the crown to the Sfiros. It is identified with Hashem's supernal will, which links Hashem, the infinite Ein Sof, with all his finite created worlds, bottom of 27 in the notes. For an intermediary is necessary in order to link the infinite with the finite. An analogy. The essence of the human soul itself is beyond all description. It is neither intellectual nor emotional. How then does the neshama, express itself and give rise to intellect and emotions if it entirely transcends these realms? That's the question. It does so, the answer is, through the faculty of will, ratzon. Ratzon is a general faculty, power, not a koyach, not limited to any particular part or function of the body, but is all-encompassing and unlimited. And though ratzon is still not the essence of the soul, but only an extension and reflection of it, it is the first state of movement from the pure soul to the faculties which express it, and thus it is an intermediary between the essence of the soul and its faculties. Now, I'm going to go just to the next column, the right side, second paragraph on the page. When new light emanates. When new light emanates from Keser, all the Sfiros are rejuvenated, as it were, and elevated. In our context, Chasidus is described as a new light, a revelation of an aspect of God herethrough concealed, a deeper insight to man. In other words, like this. It's like I told you before. Basically, this is, Kabbalistic and Hasidic terms and ideas, but the idea is very simple, my friends. When you study Chasidus, when you learn Chasidus, and what is Chasidus? Chasidus is the animating force that animates everything else. A friend of mine yesterday, we learned together, he told me that as in screenwriting, someone who writes a play, screenwriter, there's something called a through line. Does anyone know what that is? A through line? So he told me a through line is the nakuda of the play that he's writing, the script that he's writing. And a good screenwriter carries and the through line from the beginning through the middle to the end. And if not, the script comes out lousy or not as good as it could be. So I learned, this is the first time I heard it yesterday, and it's the same idea over here. Chasidus is the Nekuda Atzmis. Okay, in Hebrew, those are the words of the mimer. Nekuda of the essay. Nekuda Atzmis, the quintessential core. But what does it mean? It's the DNA that makes everything else tick. That's what he says here. And where does it come from, Avram? It comes from Keser, and it comes from the inner of Keser, and Atik, and Reshut Leis Yada. I don't want to go into these different levels, but basically, it's the deepest of the deep. Like Shlomo Carlebach would always say, is the holy holies, right? Is the deep of the deep. It's the highest. Guess what? This doesn't require animation, excitement. All of that is what I call fascinations. Right? You come to Yerushalayim. I've said this many times, but I gotta say it again. I'm standing at a bus stop, and I realize I'm standing on the stones of Yerushalayim, and I start jumping to myself. Some people look at me, and I start singing to myself. Why? I don't know why. I just all of a sudden was overtaken by the thought, hey, I'm standing in Yerushalayim. There is no, script over here. Could you tell me? Wait a minute. You can't do this because people think you're a nut. Or do you really, how long did you prepare to dance on the stones of Jerusalem? See, when you do that, you're not in, what do we say in English? You're not in the zone. You're not in the zone. You're in a fascination. Something that fascinates you talks to you at certain times. And when it doesn't fascinate you, you don't care for it. I was at the oil, and I saw an old friend, and I think I told you, my daughters were there waiting for me to come out and take them home, wherever they were going. And I went over to him, he was looking at the screen, and I grabbed him and pulled his beard and gave him a hug. And they're turning colors, my daughters. They're all, they're teenagers, young adults, and there's other women in the room, and it's quiet. And I give them a big hug, and I say, how do you do? And in the car, they said, wow, you really, it doesn't come from here. It doesn't come from here. If you have that DNA, that's who you are. Be it here, be it there. I once, years ago, I was somewhere at a kiddush in the Catskills, and someone got up and he had a big cup of wine or l'chaim, I forget, and he made a bracha, and he says, Yechi Adoneinu. And I'm looking at the people, and I know some of them, and they're really against that. And no one says a word. And I knew this person already passed away. He was such a simple person. And to him, he was saying basically, Rebbe, I still think about you, and Rebbe, I still love you. And because it was so genuine, everyone melted. Because all the arguments and all the discussions are all superficial. So he chose those words to express his love. Someone else chooses other words. And I'm not suggesting we do that. I'm just saying that and that's why even the people who would be most adamant and would tell someone like that, sit down and be quiet, didn't say a word. Didn't say a word. And trust me, he was an older person. They didn't need him. They didn't get anything from him. But when they saw him, and he had a relationship with the Rebbe back to the 1940s, he told me, he remembers the first day the Rebbe walked into 770 in the Minyan, and he didn't know who this person is, and Reb Shmuel Witten, the older chassid, told him, this is the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe's younger son-in-law. He told me I was there the first day, and the Rebbe was looking into a Gemara. Right? So, you arguing with such a person, you're just on a different wavelength. You're wasting your time. He's elsewhere. Chasidus, I'm just using these masholim, different masholim, and stories and life experiences to point out to you what we need to get to. So here we have Shavuos. We have a lot of work to do. Some say, well, Shavuos is the easiest Yom Tov. You know what? It's the hardest Yom Tov. You know why Shavuos is the hardest Yom Tov? Pesach, you got a matzah, and a maror, and a seder. Sukkot, you have a sukkah and dancing with a Torah. You got something physical to do. Shavuos, it's about learning Torah. Some say tikkun, we say tikkun, but there's no mamashut. So what's the answer? That's right. Shavuos is the hardest Yom Tov to connect to really internalize. Because what are you internalizing? The core, the nakuda. What is it? Chasidus. And that's why a lot of people have problems with Chasidus. I'm not talking about people who are shallow, or argumentative, and foolish. People who are smart, people who are refined. It's a lot of work to learn Chasidus. It's a big commitment to go to a core. It's so much easier to have a fascination and be turned on, right? A friend of mine's father, it was Tekios by the Rebbe. And by like every tzaddik, I'm sure by all the tzaddikim, Tekiah Shofar is the greatest thing, right? Here you are in 770, you're squashed like a sardine, 5,000 people, and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the tzaddik, is blowing shofar. Everyone, myself included, would turn around and listen and look, try to see the Rebbe's face. It was an awesome, mamish, an awesome sight. I can't do more than that because you had to be there. But I was there many times. So my friend's father, who was from Russia and Chassid from generations, my friend was standing next to him. My friend turns around to look at the Rebbe while he's blowing the shofar, or he's preparing. And my friend's father has his talus over his head and is looking towards the wall, towards Mizrach. And my friend said, it's not his father, his father-in-law, I'm sorry. So my friend says to his father-in-law, he says, father-in-law, aren't you going to want to see the Rebbe's holy face when he blows the shofar? So he tells his son-in-law, my dear son-in-law, he says, in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe, it says that a person during Tkiyas should focus and concentrate on the sound of the shofar. It doesn't say there we should look at anyone's face, including the Rebbe's face. And he didn't budge, and he stood towards the wall with his talus over his head. Now, I tell you, to do that for a Lubavitcher in 770 on Rosh Hashanah is like jumping into a fire. It's Mesiras Nefesh. The urge, the temptation to want to see the tzaddik's face is so powerful that it drew everyone. And this chassid is not doing it. Probably the only one in 770. You think about this story that he told me, it's because he was living with Pneumius. Really. I'm not saying that looking at a tzaddik's face is superficial and chitzonius, but he says, this is what it says in the Siddur of the Alter Rebbe. What do you want from me? I'm following what the Alter Rebbe is saying. He doesn't tell me to look at someone's face. Even though it's my Rebbe, and it's a great tzaddik, and it's Rosh Hashanah, and it's awesome. Chevra, we're going to continue tomorrow, but this is the Nakuda, okay? I think I've given you a lot of stories and anecdotes.
Very beautiful story.
What? What did you say?
Great story.
Okay, Yoini, remember?
I said great story. I'm sorry, I'm driving.
I know. Yoini,
Beautiful story.
now you know what you need to do next Rosh Hashanah. You know, there's a time for singing and joy and dancing and all that, and there's a time for deep focus and concentration. Have a great day. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Bye-bye.